Hello and welcome to my Solasta Crown the Master Barbarian Class Guide, levels 1 to 8. I'm a host, Methfu. So if this guide managed to help you out even a tiny little bit, please smash that like button. It would be greatly appreciated. Alright, let's go. So in this guide, we're going to be going over the most optimal way to build a barbarian at the start of the game. So let's start a new character. So our barbarian is going to be a tank. He's going to be a frontliner. There's two races that come to mind when I'm going to build a barbarian tank, and that is the Marsh Halfling and the Sylvan Elf. So let's start with the Elf first. So the Elf gets +2 dex. So our main stats as a barbarian tank is going to be dex, strength, and constitution. So +2 dex is very good for our AC. It's good at the start of the game as well before we get a strength belt, because the way we're going to build the barbarian tank is that we're going to build a dex at the start to make it very tanky and use dex weapons or finesse weapons at the beginning, and then later on transition into more of a strength build once we get some strength items. Then we have Fate Ancestry, saving throw advantage against charm, immunity to magical sleep, always nice to have. Then we have Dark Vision, see normally in dim light and in natural darkness as if in dim light. So once again, darkness is a big deal in this game. It is real terror. If you can't see your enemy, you're getting disadvantage on it, and it really sucks. So it's good to have this. Over to Keen Senses, proficient in the perception skill, nice to have. Trance, 4 hours of meditation are sufficient to rest, not too bad either. Then over to Sylvan Elf lineage features, so 7 movement. Movement is a big deal in this game. When you can move around that much, it gives you insane amounts of possibilities, abilities to make plays as well. You can literally get to a caster in the back really quickly if you need to. It's just very solid to have that much movement. Then we've got ability score increase +1 wisdom. So wisdom's nice to have as well, just for saving throws mainly, just so you don't get scared, confused, feared, or whatever have you. Then Elf weapon training, proficient with longsword, short bow, and longbow, pretty nice to have as well. Sylvan adaptability, proficient in survival and athletic skills, advantage on survival when hunting, nice. Languages, common, elvish, dwarvish, and halfling. So with the languages, to sort out between your party members, just make sure you don't overlap too much. Moving it on to the Marsh Halfling. So as you can see, 5 movement, 2 less movement tiles than the Sylvan Elf, but they make up for it in other ways. So ability score increase, dex +2. Once again, our main stats going to be dex, strength, and constitution. So having 2 dex is nice to have. As I said, once again, AC increase also allows us to hit at the beginning of the game with finesse weapons. And we've got brave, advantage on saving throws against being frightened, always nice to have. Lucky, when you roll a 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, re-roll and use a new roll. So this is almost like a second chance Sunday, so to speak, because this actually helps you out quite a lot in most of the game. It's a very strong passive to have. Then we've got Halfling Nimbleness. You can move through the space of any creature that is of a larger size than you. So we are barbarians, so most of the game we're going to be predominantly using melee weapons. So this is actually really nice to have, because this means that we can get around the battlefield even better. Best mobility, even though we're lacking it, but still pretty nice to have. Then Marsh Halfling lineage features. So we've got ability score increase +1 constitution. So as I said before, main stats for barbarian is dex, strength, and constitution, so it's a no-brainer. Languages, common, halfling, as I said before, sort that out between your people, make sure you have a good kind of variation. Then we've got swamp areas with marshes and ponds, and humid atmosphere are considered swamp terrain, so it's a nice little bonus to have as well. Moving over to dark vision, see normally in dim light and in natural darkness as if in dim light. So once again, dark vision is a real terror, so it's always nice to have that. Right, so for the basis of this guide, we're going to be picking the Marsh Halfling. So for class, we're going to be going Barbarian for our Barbarian class guide. Just makes the most sense. So we're going to skip through most of this, but with the Rage in battle, you fight with Primal Ferocity. On your turn, you can enter Rage as a bonus action. This grants you advantage on strength, saves, and checks. Initial +2 bonus to melee attack damage, and resistance to slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing damage. Lasts for 1 minute or ends if you have not attacked or suffered damage since your last turn. You start with 2 rages renewed after a long rest. Right, so just go over something really quickly with rage. So we are going to be using dex finesse weapons at the beginning of the game, so we won't be making much use of rage at all, just because this actually utilizes strength weapons. So we need a strength weapon to make this work. So this probably won't come into effect till like level 4, level 8, or whenever we actually change our main stat to strength using an item. Let's take a look at unarmored defense. When you're not wearing armor, your armor class equals 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your constitution modifier, you can use a shield and still gain this benefit. So that is big. So in other words, we aren't going to be wearing armor. Over to equipment. So as I said before, we are not using strength as our main stat at the beginning of the game until we get a strength item to increase it. We're going to be using dex, and what we'll do is we're going to switch out the battle axe and put in a rapier instead. The reason why we chose a rapier is because it's got 1d8 damage. It's a lot stronger than the short sword, which only has 1d6. And on top of that, it means we can equip a shield in our offhand to bring our AC up even higher for our barbarian tank. Moving on to hand axes, so we're going to switch those out for short bow. So most of the time we will be in melee, but at the beginning of the fights, when we're kind of like poking people from a distance, instead of kind of charging into them, as you know, we're playing a marsh halfling, our movement is very limited. So having that short bow as kind of like a flex shot to be able to shoot out some like arrows, obviously our dex can be high enough as well that we will be able to hit. Also, it makes a lot of sense. Let's put that in. Right, so over to background. So depending what other classes you have in your party really affects your background choices for the classes you have. So for the base of this guide, I'll be picking Spy because I actually have a party in mind. I know if I don't pick Spy on my barbarian character now, I'm not going to be able to pick up on any other characters in my party. So try to make sure you have everything covered in your party. So if you don't have a wizard, make sure you pick up academic. For the enchanter proficiencies, so proficient with the Manakalan rosary, supposed to be useful to enchant items. That's very needed to be able to make items and stuff. Then obviously, if you don't have a thief, you can take a low life to be efficient with thieves tools. So just make sure you got all your party's weaknesses kind of like covered. So background, personality and flags, let's just choose what you want. This is kind of role-playing purposes and to add more personality to your character. And let's go next. Okay, so moving on to ability scores. So the fun part has begun as always. So as I said before, if you want to play with standard array, you're more than welcome to move stuff in. You want to roll the dice for really strong stats, you're more than welcome to as well. But I know we're playing point buy. I prefer point buy just because I find it's more of a challenge for me. I play on the hardest difficulty of the game, which is Cataclysm, and I just prefer to play point buy just because I feel like it's the most balanced approach. But as I said before, you play how you want to play. Right, so let's start spending these points, starting with strength. So you do not want to have your strength at a minus. Jumping and climbing in this game is a really big deal in combat. Being able to move around the battlefield with ease really helps. So I actually recommend having strength at 10 on most characters, just to be able to climb and also be able to jump across things. Having it any lower and minus will put you at big disadvantages in battle. Also, you might be wondering, why is my strength at 10 when I'm a barbarian? As I said earlier in the guide, I'm going dex at the beginning, so I'm going to be actually pumping my dex massively all the way to 17 to help my AC, and I'll use finesse weapons at the start. Once I find a strength item, I'll be changing our main stat back to strength once again and equipping strength weapons. But at the beginning of the game, having this high dex really helps with our AC, helps with like range attacks as well, helps with our finesse weapons. This gives us a better, smoother early transition into the mid and late game. So having dex that high is great. Over to con, so we're going to raise con up to max as well, pretty much. We're putting it up to 16. Having con on barbarian is amazing, especially a barbarian tank. A barbarian literally has one of the highest HP pools of all the classes. So having this at 16 is actually even stronger than it would be on most other characters. Then intellect is our dump stat. We're going to keep that at 8. Wisdom, we're going to bring that up to 14, just kind of for the saving throws. Stop us from charms, stop us from being feared, and all those other kind of mind control shenanigans that goes on in these D&D kind of games. Once again, charisma is another dump stat. We don't need charisma on the barbarian. Okay, so we're in the proficiencies tab. So we're going to take athletics once again. Jumping, swimming, climbing, all that great stuff that you need in combat is one of the main ones we're going to take. I'm going to take perception as well here, just because I don't think animal handling or survival is actually that great. Plus, it's also wisdom checks. Perception really helps when you're looking for traps, other things like that, just to be able to have an extra kind of roll at getting a chance to look at something. Even though I probably have another character that I have a higher wisdom anyway, and probably a higher perception, it's nice to have it on most of the other characters anyway. So background languages, just make sure you have quite an even spread between your party members. Make sure you don't overlap too much. I was going to take Goblin and Orcish for the basis of this guide and go next. Right, so we're in the identity screen. You literally design your character however you want. It doesn't really make a difference to the base of this guide. I was going to name it Barbarian because it is a Barbarian and it's finished. Right, so let's start leveling this bad boy up to level 8. So let's go, level 2. So you have gained 10 hit points. You have gained 1 additional hit die. Unlocked class features Reckless Attack. Before you make your first attack on your turn, you can decide to attack recklessly. Doing so gives you advantage on melee weapon attack rolls using strength during this turn, but attack rolls against you have advantage until your next turn. So as I said before, we're not using strength at the beginning of the game. This will only come into effect probably around like level 6, level 5, depending when we get our first strength items. At the beginning of the game, we can kind of safely ignore this because it only scales with strength anyway, so there's not much point in using it. Just give the enemy an advantage on ourselves. Over to danger sense, you have an advantage on dexterity, saving throws for effects and spells, as long as you're not blinded or incapacitated. So this is really good. As I said before, our dex is through the roof. As you can see over here, it's on 17. We'll go up to 18 at some point, probably at level 4. So as you can see, this is really, really goddamn strong. Let's finish. Right, level 3. So once again, we gain 10 more hit points. At 3rd level, you choose a path that shapes the nature of your rage. Additional rage use, you can rage 1 additional time per long rest. So let's go next and pick a primal path. So let's have a look through these. So let's start with Path of the Berserker. Frenzy, you can go into Frenzy when you rage. If you do so, for the duration of your rage, you can make a single melee weapon attack as a bonus action. On each of your turns after this one, when your rage ends, you suffer 1 level exhaustion unless you make a successful DC 10 con saving throw. The DC increases by 5 each time until you complete a short or long rest. So this is really good for the extra attack. Very strong. It's one of the highest kind of like damage dealing kind of classes right at the beginning of the game just because of this. But as you can see, it also has its cons as well. There's always a double-edged sword when it comes to the Barbarian. Over to Path of the Claw. So Dragon Ancestry. You choose one type of dragon as your ancestor. The damage type associated with your choice is used by the features you gain later. So it gives you like breath attacks and stuff, so you can literally pick your kind of poison, so to speak. I mean, not actually poison, but you can pick between acid, fire, poison, cold, and lightning, depending what kind of damage you want to do later on. Dragon Scales. While raging, you gain a +1 bonus to AC and resistance to damage type of your draconic ancestor. So this just means whatever you pick, so say for example I pick fire, it means I got resistance to fire and also +1 bonus to AC versus fire. Path of the Mage Bane. Warcry. While raging, a Mage Bane who takes damage from spells or other magical attacks can use a reaction to unleash a powerful Warcry, dealing psychic damage equal to 1d6 plus con modifier to all enemies within 6 cells. Pretty strong kind of anti-mage subclass, but nowhere near as good as Path of the Stone. So Path of the Stone gets stone resilience. While raging, you gain temporary HP equal to twice your proficiency bonus at the end of your turn. So what this means is you kind of got like a steady regeneration going on every single turn in battle. Kind of like Wolverine, you're literally just healing up all the time. This gives you even more effective HP to be able to use in combat. So it makes the Barbarian actually a really strong tank. And at higher levels, we got strength from within. Your constitution saving throw is used for any saving throw if it is higher than the one normally used. So this is really strong as well. Then we've got Rock Solid. While raging, you gain +1 to AC per hostile opponent that you can see within 1 cell of you, up to maximum of 4+. So in other words, if I'm in the fray of things, which I will be as a Barbarian tank, this is going to give me at least 4 AC if I've got 4 enemies there, or 1 or 2 AC depending how many enemies I have next to me. So this is actually really strong on the Barbarian, coupled with the health. So in other words, you have the massive AC to allow you to actually avoid the damage in the first place, allow the enemies to actually miss their attacks, and if they actually do break through and hit you, you have the Wolverine regeneration plus the massive health that comes along with being a Barbarian. So let's go finish. So going up to level 4. So once again, we get more hit points. We get a choice here now. We get a choice between ability scores or gaining a bonus feat. So depending what we're going to do with our Barbarian, or what you've decided to do yourself, is depending on what we pick here. So in other words, if we have found a strength item by about level 4, we'll be taking the bonus feat here and going next, and then going into follow-up strike. So what follow-up strike does is when you use the attack action with a two-handed weapon, you can use a bonus action to make a fast melee attack to follow up, dealing an additional 1d4 plus strength bonus damage of the same type. So as you can see, it says strength bonus damage. So if we don't have any strength, don't take it because it's not worth it. So let's go back. So we're going to be taking the ability score instead because we don't have the strength bonus to make that follow-up strike actually worth taking at this point in the game. So in other words, as I said before, if you do find a strength item around level 4, do take the follow-up strike bonus feat. If you don't, go into ability score, go next, and pump the dex and con up. So dex is at 18 now, increase our AC, as you can see, goes up to 17 from 16, and con is nice to have once again. Once that goes to 18, we get even more HP on our beefy Barbarian. Let's finish. Right, level 5, here we come. So more hit points, we get more attack rolls, saving throws, skill and tool checks, everything like that. We also get an extra attack, so you attack one more time per combat turn. When you use the attack or shove actions, your speed increases by 10 feet. If you're not wearing heavy armor. This is one of the reasons I took the Marsh Halfling over the Sivan Elf. That's because I knew I was going to get a bit more movement speed later on, so it wouldn't be that much of a difference. And also coupled with haste on the Barbarian, which I will have at some point in the game. Someone's going to be casting haste to me to increase my movement tile range as well, so it doesn't actually make too much of a difference being a Marsh Halfling. Let's go next and finish up to level 6. So level 6, we get more hit points, we get additional rage use. You can use rage 1 additional time per long rest. Strength from within. Your constitution saving throw is used for any saving throw if it's higher than one normally used. As you can see, very strong. Constitution is going to be really high soon as well. So literally it's only reflex saves at the moment our dex is covering, whereas constitution is covering everything else. Let's finish. Up to level 7. So once again, we get more hit points. We have unlocked another class feature, Feral Instincts. Your instincts are so honed that you have an advantage on initiative rolls. Additionally, if you're surprised at the beginning of combat and are not incapacitated, you can act normally on your first turn, but only if you enter rage before doing anything else on that turn. Really strong. If we get caught our pants down, this will help us out quite a bit. Let's finish. Right, so up to level 8, the final level of this guide. So as I said before, if you take an ability score at level 4, you'll take the bonus feat here for the follow-up strike. If you take here the bonus feat at level 4 instead, you'll be taking ability score here instead. So it's kind of interchangeable depending on when you find that strength item to make strength your main stat once again. So what we'll do is we'll switch over to bonus feat, we'll go next, and then we'll take a follow-up strike, because by now at level 8 we should have found a strength item. We should have found one at least to be able to change our main stat over to strength once again and use that to use two-handed weapons instead and hit like a truck. And let's finish. Right, so that about sums up our Barbarian Tank class guide for beginners. If you've got any suggestions on what you want me to do next, or any builds that you want to see, please let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, I'll catch you next one. Take care.